Very difficult conflict. Just discovered the classic ia to turn somewhat pia by my wife of 10 years. She spent inordinate amounts of time with very good married guy friend, who is available most weekdays due to his type of job. Part of a couple we know, have been to one another's homes, kids in common, etc. Classic. Wife got very emotionally dependent, then to flirting, heavy flirting, then turned to kissing at times, slightly more physical once, but apparently no bonding. Not that it matters, as she just couldn't. When he pushed for more, she supposedly backed away, in an off and on roller coaster that crisscrossed between friendship and much more than friendship. Lots of texting, phone time, twice, during the intense periods. He is very emotionally needy, I know this personally, and it all started with her helping, listening, fixing him. You get the picture. He played her, she ultimately was the very willing participant. She initiated the first kiss. Importantly, I am previously married, and the same exact thing happened with my first wife. I forgave her, tried working it out, and 18 months later she left me for another guy. I met wife number 2 while in divorce process. She was engaged at the time, I didn't know, she broke it off as I learned of it. I was officially divorced about a year when we got married 10 years ago. So, in this marriage, at the outset, I told wife number 2, cheat on me and it is immediately over. With all my being, I mean it. It was crystal clear, no debate about that. Now, I've caught her in this. Everyone says the same thing of course, but I just really couldn't have imagined her going through and continuing something like this. We often got all high and mighty about how anyone could do such a thing. She immediately admitted when confronted, and what I believe to be full details have been emerging as we talked it out. She's begged and begged to work it out. The realization for her, through included discussion with her best, female, friend she's known since childhood, is that she's got a real psychological issue with needing positive attention, and the excitement thrill. We've also come to realize, A, how compartmentalized she kept her marriage, I would say it was happy, truly, and B, how she lies without realizing she's lying. Initially, when caught, I of course asked how many times this kissing. At least 3, I believed. Oh no, not any more than that. Tracing facts I can piece together, we've gotten to about 10 or 11 times. Granted it was 2 years ago, but she's got a lousy memory needing to be prompted through to get it all extracted. I think we've done so, I have a pretty good picture, I believe. I work 65 to 80 hours a week, and am often on the road 4+ day, week for months at a time. It is the one and only thing we ever argue about, and the one thing I can take responsibility and accountability for. Although of course the angry me states I was making a living for our family, she's a stay-at-home mom, but a pretty nice lifestyle, I will say. Of course, now I wish I'd quit my job and moved to a tiny apartment and understood the depth of that issue. However, I am attentive, loving, caring, and outwardly cognizant about the issue when I am in a deep work cycle. This started less than a year after moving to a new state, town, and she admittedly had trouble making friends that she connected with at first. She was easy prey, he was there. Kaboom. 2 other relevant facts. 1. For the first 8 years, wife was a bit overweight. As the affair started, she proceeded to lose about 40 pounds. Never looked better in her life than she does today. Funny how I endured the heavy girl, now she's fit and trim and she will be out there for someone else. 2. Let's just say our physical life was pretty mediocre most of the time. Highly willing participants, especially as she lost weight, her appearance improved greatly, but not great performance. My fault. To this day, even now with everything out, she insists that bonding was not the driver, it was not about getting bonding elsewhere. It was the excitement, the adrenaline rush, being paid attention to in the teenage-like mode that infatuation holds. I pretty much believe this. She swears it's over, it had already been over for a few months now. She swears she regrets it, last 4 days of crying and sobbing, and while I believe her, I've told her we must make plans for separation and divorce, plain and simple. We've talked endlessly about how it was this separate thing from her real life, and how while my work life left her too alone, she actually was content in the marriage. Inside I am a raging lunatic, and in heated yelling fits, have nearly lost it physically, both with her, and more realistically to tracking down the OM for physical, public harm. From what I read, doing the whole classic reaction process. I'm proud of myself for doing nothing while in such a highly emotional state, but it's a minute-by-minute struggle. I am devastated, which takes the form of anger. She's begged us to do MC in her IC. I've begrudgingly agreed, where I don't see the point of making a pretend effort when I can never envision the streaming video that replays in my mind continuously night and day ever going away while I am in her presence, if ever at all. I can say I love her and always will, but of course, I hate her for what she has done. I despise what she's done to me the most but cannot stomach what she's now taken away from my son. He is highly fixed onto the 3 of us, in his drawings, writing, and stories. It's almost criminal to read, what makes you most happy? When me, mom, and dad are all together. Which city, house would you rather live in? And a place we can all be together. Truly sweet, sweet stuff that is now heartbreaking. I am beside myself every day I hear one of these phrases. Going through the normal life motions the past 4 days, bedtime, playtime, eating, talking with him. Mother's Day was a joy, we both often need to walk away and sob in another room. You all know the pain, it's intense. So, my questions for you all include: 1. Does reconciliation really exist? Really, I can't imagine ever being in acceptance mode. I've agreed to do MC, really, your opinions, is there hope here? 2. How does a man not go beat the living hell out of OM? In so many deep angles here, this is real. I need a face-to-face, let him know I will not be wronged like this and go away. I need to relieve the rage. I need to be able to know down the road that he didn't get away with it. I know where he lives, I know his wife, I know his children. The OM is a work-at-home guy, so he is around town all day long. Any action leaves my home and family open to retribution. But I still cannot let it go. On top of that, he's a little bit unstable. To the point she confided in her best friend that if she turned up dead, this was the guy she should have investigated. 3. I know the OM's wife. I have written an email to send to them both, disclosing the affair and that I know and proclaiming he is never to make any contact ever again. I have hesitated before sending this, making sure I don't do something that will end up costing me. But I want to do so, I must do something about this. 4. I've agreed to do MC, mostly to work in the interest of my son. Can it ever work staying together just for the young child, but live as roommates? Or is that thinking just because I know the financial devastation, the logistical nightmares of splitting the household? 5. Also MC, I'm wary because I am of course looking for something that doesn't exist, and erase the memory button. I understand working through a process, but I do not believe I could give this years of working on what she and I both perceive to be mostly her neediness issues. I'm looking for a switch to go off, some big breakthrough, where I can then make a final decision that she's changed and is worth sticking with. But I really cannot envision that. So, have I already sabotaged MC? 6. I'm having a hard time with the fact that she knew my rule, given my prior divorce experience, and did it anyway. There's plenty of material about doesn't it make you weak to take her back after such a thing. Oddly, because she knows I loved her enormously, I could see that in the first 24 hours after D-Day, she really believed deep down that I'd get to a point that I was willing to forgive and work it out. We quickly have gotten her to understand the baseline is 99% I am leaving, not there's an option that I am staying. I saw this perspective in her, and frankly I resent it, feeding the rage inside even more. This is a real struggle for me. For those who have forgiven and moved on, how does one reconcile the weakness and not feel like you are doing exactly the behavior that led her astray in the first place? I do not claim to know this didn't go full bonding. I'll never know. I will say once confronted, she revealed intricate details of texting, and was almost disappointed when she found out I didn't have all her prior texts printed out waiting to validate her story. First MC session today to me was way less helpful than 4 days and nights of talking and reading and talking more, but I suppose day 1 MC is more interview, fact collection than anything. We scheduled a double session for WED, this will be telling me on my hopes for that process. Funny thing, I read something here regarding polygraphs and told her I was having her take one. She didn't blink an eye and agreed to do so. I think I may line one up. Wonder what they cost. She does continue to beg forgiveness, working at it, and staying together. I just don't know. Seems unanimous on sending email to the OM's wife. How does a man control the rage? Seriously? Follow-up question. Anyone with experience leaving a job for a significantly lower salary in an effort to try and make it work? This seems to be the one thing I can do. Is this a good, bad, or indifferent idea? I envision doing this, it not working out, and me hating her even worse for now trying to make 2 households work on much less money. The whole angle of feeling weak to even consider, much less work at, reconciling is a really big deal to me too. Where's my pride, after all? My self-respect, manhood. Buried somewhere in the heart I spilled all over the floor. You can't choose both. On one hand, if R can be worked out, the result seems like it can actually be phenomenal. Maybe better than it was when the affair happened. Better than it was on D-Day and the whole affair had been over and things were actually pretty good, given that you've been shocked into reawakening, with onus on both sides to really work at it. On the other hand, even working toward R takes such an unbelievable leap of faith that has now been broken. I just don't know that I can do it. Rewarding her for cheating by not throwing her out and working at it is already eating at me, and we've only been to initial MC sessions. It's still the right thing to do, but damn. I do not want to turn into a full-time permanent detective in my own home forever. I'd rather walk away now than live like that for the long term. Of course, with this all raw, I'm all over it, and at this point there's no contact. It's down the road with life back to being somewhat semi-normal. Eventually I do have to go back to work. That will haunt me. It is just so incredibly ironic that once you've discovered the affair, you the wrong spouse now have to decide if you trust her. This sucks. I gave the first wife a chance after her first 18 months later, she left for a different guy. And I have to say, as I type this, it sure sounds pathetic. Current wife is remorseful. She had already ended the EAP before being caught, and is committed, and asking for my commitment as well, to working on the marriage, to come out on a better side. MC has already shown us the laundry list of her issues: adopted, alcoholic father, deceased mother who was her best friend, lifelong weight issues. And she knows we needs to work them out, let her love herself more fully before she can love anyone else fully. She states she now realizes her chase of the high for attention has probably pushed away me, the only person other than her mother that truly loved her for who she was. Then we get too deep into unconditional love dialogue. Not sure that exists in marriage, only in parent-child love. As to why I'd consider it, not concluded in any way, you are right. My ability to completely trust anyone again, ever, is completely gone. In a warped sense, then, perhaps I'm better off with this understood and out in the open, with someone on the other side working to overcompensate for that, rather than making it another person's issue that they cannot possibly understand nor do anything about. Further, I can now reserve a piece of me and always up and leave if she stops working at it. I'm not satisfied with where it is, or cannot tolerate the depth or frequency of the subconscious misery. We've discussed a contract for me to try for take your fair share of assets and go, or we try and you slip up in any way, to my discretion, and you get nothing. She says she'd sign that agreement. I'm trying to take time, sort it through, MC, and give the attempt a fair shot. Rightly or wrongly, part of my must include action regarding the There is no option where I simply take the high road and let it go. The thing I'm stuck about is having no good options for dealing with the before, unless I decide I'm out and leave, then it's game on, and I'm comfortable with any and all carnage I leave. But meanwhile, during the attempt, on the one hand I don't want to go to jail for beating him senseless. On the other, telling his wife obviously then leaves my family, home vulnerable to actions he may pursue. He is slightly unstable. He works at home, I commute an hour away and don't feel I can protect my home properly. Additionally, the wives, mine and his, are acquainted, formerly better friends and share a common circle of friends. Telling her, surely will then have my wife labeled what she is in the community. If I leave that is fine. If I stay, however, that is not what I want. My latest thought is finding him, tell him that either he tells his wife and then have his wife call me so I know she got the story, or I will. But the repercussion fears still hold true. I am not worried about him pursuing her or what my wife might do. She knows full well, if she wants to go be with him or off on her own, she's more than welcome to go. With the full transparency I have, it does seem true the affair had already run its course by the time I discovered it and has been over for a couple months. My concern is him seeking retribution through property or other type damage to my home or property. If I'm not on a reconciliation path, I could care less what he does to wife. But for as long as I am on that possible path, I do unfortunately care. And when I do tell his wife, which will absolutely happen, the slander in the community is going to happen. I know it's not my fault, but I will have to be dealing with that, too, along with everything else. In the context of the affair already being over, and my wife fully transparent and even cooperative in dealing with the blackmail thing doesn't apply. Telling his wife, yes, just a matter of how and when. Talking to him, I don't know. I guess I'm sort of waiting for him to reach out to my wife again, to set me off. I texted her cell phone asking to confirm she got my email. No response to either. So strange. I simply revealed the facts as I have heard them in the email, and added a note to him, stay away from me and my wife, should she choose to share with him. Wife is sending a no-contact note this evening to him. Got a lengthy note back from the wife. She's digesting, has confronted I do feel a little closure, although I do still really want to just beat How does a man get rid of this never-ending, constant thought? Now sending the a note as well, on top of wife's no further contact. Now, onward with some focus on me and my family, wherever it takes us. It's a little unique in that the affair has already ended when I found out about it, had been over for several months at least. Thus far, she's in full cooperation mode, sent the no contact within 30 seconds of me requiring it. I have full transparency, begging to keep going to MC and work through it. She stayed true to her story, and the OM's wife and the OM have both messaged me with details that sync up with the story she gave me. I'm not sure either of us are pro-exposure, insofar as I'm not telling family or friends. I don't see the point to that until I leave. It's none of their business either way till that point. Still doesn't mean I'll stay. Right now, I do not think I can stay over the long term, but I am less than 3 weeks into this and still quite raw. I asked for opinions, so thanks I think. Yes, I did talk to his wife. Yes, they're now supposedly separating and filing for divorce. Who knows what's true there? I don't care either way. As far as I know, it never got to physical contact. I know you don't buy that for a second. That's okay, I have a hard time with it too. The OM unsolicited said this when it would have been easier to say the opposite. Either way, this will get verified in polygraph next week. Anyone have any experience with polygraph? Sure would hate to walk out over a bad reading or something, but it's all I've got right now. If it turns out to be a lie, I leave right then and there because when given the opportunity to come clean and start this BS healing and reconciliation process, she lied again. She is willing to sign a post-nup basically throwing away her portion of everything that she can have now by just walking away. 2 or 3 times in discussion I've gotten to I just need to leave, and she's begged to have me stay, to work at it, and thus far has done all the right heavy lifting, takes full accountability. But who knows, it's early. This is hard, really hard. I'm actually not currently so worried she's off running around doing anything wrong. I'm not even so insanely focused on her doing it again years from now, although yes, it's a doubt and a question. I'm fully absorbed in how do I forgive what she's done? How do I let go of the sick pit in the stomach knowledge that while I was off slaving in a job I hated, she was home infatuated and falling in love? I just don't see it happening, even though we actually had a pretty good thing when I was home, and we have a 6-year-old, hence why I am giving MC in the process its chance so I can know if, when I walk away, I tried. My approach continues to be collecting input, evaluating all that I can collect as applied to my own situation, then taking thoughtful actions, and adjusting as I learn. It's all I can do at this point, because if I deal with it on pure raw emotion, I'm simply in jail. There are dozens and dozens of variables that make each situation different. The most important is how the cheater approaches the situation. If they aren't fully remorseful and truly committed to working it out, I don't see how the offended spouse can make it work. I may very well end up kicking wife to the curb in the end, but I will be able to do so with chin held high knowing I did everything possible to try and work through it. I may not be able to get past it, but I will not leave my young son a split household on anyone's black and white manifesto based on their own individual experience, nor will I look back and wonder what if. It's all got value as input and consideration for me, but I have to sort it all and use what works for me. I know that makes me weak in some ways, but I'm learning to live with that. I still have to look in the mirror. Meanwhile, absolutely on my toes standing at the urinal of life. There's just no way I'd beg her to leave OM if he was in the picture, but that's also part of my own dilemma now. Had I found out while it was still going on, it would have been a one-sentence conversation. Choose him or me? Now. She says she would have chosen me without hesitation, but I'll never really know. So of course, it's part of what haunts me. 3 weeks later, I have worked through getting to the truth about what happened physically, polygraph to come, and am now getting through what happened emotionally. Realizing how emotionally deep she got, what I am now struggling with is that she told the OM that she was in love with him. Told him she knew it was wrong, couldn't help herself, couldn't stop it. And I am just not getting past it in any healthy way at all. She insists she still loved me all along, but yes, fell in love with this man, and told him so, which is just a killer to hear, ain't it? I don't know that it can be both ways. One doesn't fall back and forth, me, then him, then me again. That is not really love, and that she doesn't even know what love really is. She insists she does know, that this has all taught her exactly what love is and has confirmed what she already had figured out she wants, me. That it wasn't love, it was infatuation at the time, although this period of several months, she did not figure that out and kept at it. My internal debate is that this woman I was married to for 10 years, I felt the idea know what love is, which is what made it so powerful to give to someone else. I grapple still about our being possible here, that I just cannot get past her admission, in my mind, that she in fact loved him, and therefore, in the process, did not love me, that she turned her back on me, us, chased her fantasy, and made it more real, gave her heart over to him. Therefore, why would I risk or believe her or want that heart back now? Am I seeing this too narrowly, selfishly, or incorrectly? About my own full commitment, the answer is yes and no. Fully transparent and committed to participating in the process without withholding anything, but not truthfully willing to do the heavy lifting extras at this point. I think that will come, and I think I've made that clear. But your point of giving full respect to get it, in our MC session last night as I was venting a bit, my wife had a crying breakdown and blurted out, would I go through all of this if I didn't absolutely want to be with you? It gave me pause at the time, and your words reinforced the point. While I contend that I do need to evaluate the past, I also hear you in that I need to more importantly work at using that evaluation as an input to be viewing the future and whether I can do that with her or not. The OM is totally out of the picture, I have full transparency, and saw the NC, and the had already ended several months before I discovered it. Yes, it helps, but no, it does not solve the question for me. Wife is absolutely remorseful, absolutely recommitted, absolutely doing the heavy lifting and legwork I require to even attempt R. While wife has shared all details and answered all questions I have asked, I seem to still get overly engrossed in the history at times. What I was missing as this happened, what I believed in our marriage at the time, and yes, the fact that she had told the OM she loved him. In fact, we just finished a lengthy discussion after she'd written me replies to several questions I still had. We are now 31 days post D-Day. Yes, she used the word, maybe even believing it at the time, but really looking back at it, it was infatuation with a fantasy. And a drug like high, not the man or the person himself, and, she says, not instead of me, but in addition to me. In our deep discussion today, through her tears she shared with me that she's ashamed to say she didn't even recognize what true love really even is until she observed me going through this process, through the pain. And with her eyes now opened and through her process of self-discovery, and the help of MC, she wants to give me that kind of love. I suppose I have to take some solace in that. My wife has 2 good friends that obviously I know also. Early after D-Day, it came to light that they'd been told or aware of the emotional attachment or kissing that had occurred. Neither did anything about it. In fact, my wife ashamedly admitted that looking back, At one point she had introduced one of her GFs to the OM and now can see it as she was somewhat parading her new BF to this friend. Enraged, I considered them to be enemies of the marriage and told my WW they were not welcome in our lives ever again, and were they to come to my home, I would throw them all out. NC to the one who was told about the kissing, limited interaction to the other. She lives several states away anyway. Phone calls, emails, FB, okay, but no visits. Fast forward 14 weeks, trying to R, remorseful wife doing all she can, and this topic comes up. Stepping back and looking at it, I'm not sure I am being fair here as I went through some scorched earth over the top taking control. She's entitled to have friends, and to cut off ties to people she grew up with, known for decades is over the top. How have you BS dealt with these people in your lives? I know I'll not allow my WW to head out for drinks or overnight visits with these people, but I feel may have taken it too far. Yet I'll be damned if I will be fooled again, nor will I welcome any enabler in my life, even if I were to ever to mystically somehow regain that trust in my WW. Half a year later, have tried for the past 9+ months to work at R but not feeling it's going to work out. So, we're going to trial separation, possibly advance to formal legal separation or D. Two issues for me now, logically, are that one, she has not worked for 3 years before our 7-year-old son was born, and I make a good income but am classically resentful of handing over half or more of my paycheck to her to live the lifestyle to which she's become accustomed while I go live in a cardboard box somewhere. I want to provide for my son, no questions asked, but in the process, if I am being honest, I am then going to be providing far more to her than I am comfortable with, especially given that she caused this all through her cheating, although I guess most laws, including here in NY, adultery doesn't impact settlement terms. Anyway, I know next step is to seek legal help. But before I get there, I'm wondering what to expect, for my own mental preparation. I am aware of the 17% child support expectation, no problem there, although I am still confused on how you pay that percent of gross income from your net income. She then gets 30% of my gross income on top of that since she will be primary physical custody. Also, to be paid from my net income. She will then be entitled to much more than half of my take-home pay. Is it how it works? Sheesh, not to sound unreasonable or vindictive or disrespect stay-at-home moms, but it just seems so unfair. She's not worked outside the home, provided no income. Yes, her home services have great value. I worked my butt off, which gave her the means to enable her and she is entitled to enough income that I will now step down significantly in lifestyle and home that I must also provide room for my son so that she can maintain hers that I provided in the first place. And what if I stopped working my butt off and flipped burgers? What then? We've been married over 11 years now. With my work, travel schedule, it makes more sense for her to maintain primary physical custody, equal joint legal custody, and she'll work part-time so as to minimize the disruption in his life. She is early 40s. She'd like to keep the house, if I were paying for it, but I am sure even on my food salary we can't reasonably afford that no matter how we split the money. But she has virtually no current income, which is where I understand she is entitled to a significant portion of my current income for her maintenance on top of child support. The one thing we are not debating in any way is maintaining what is best for our son in every way possible, and not using custody, visitation rights as any pawn in our split. I get to see him as much as I want and can, and we minimize the disruption to his life. Although he will have to move, we'd like to not make him change schools, which will be a challenge. We do want to keep it all amicable, even use one mediator and keep it all civil. I just want to be mentally prepared for what I am going to hear as to what she is entitled to so that I don't flip out on the spot. I don't want to make any lawyer rich in this process. I am probably better off just giving it over and moving on. She doesn't want us to split up and supposedly was never about the money, but isn't going to settle for much less than she's entitled to either. And in the end, I want my son comfortable, so she wins. With my work, travel schedule, it makes more sense for her to maintain primary physical custody, equal joint legal custody, and she'll work part-time so as to minimize the disruption in his life. She is early 40s. She'd like to keep the house, if I were paying for it, but I am sure even on my food salary we can't reasonably afford that no matter how we split the money. But she has virtually no current income, which is where I understand she is entitled to a significant portion of my current income for her maintenance on top of child support. The one thing we are not debating in any way is maintaining what is best for our son in every way possible, and not using custody, visitation rights as any pawn in our split. I get to see him as much as I want and can, and we minimize the disruption to his life. Although he will have to move, we'd like to not make him change schools, which will be a challenge. We do want to keep it all amicable, even use one mediator and keep it all civil. I just want to be mentally prepared for what I am going to hear as to what she is entitled to so that I don't flip out on the spot. 2 years later, moved out, went through that hell, but emerging slowly. The only thing I really do know is that I don't know, especially when it comes to the future. About R, I don't actually look at it like it failed. I think, for me on a personal basis, it just wasn't going to ever happen. What she had done was a deal breaker for me, no matter how much I wanted my family and my life. I just couldn't do it, as much as I tried, as much as she tried. She really did everything right once we got through Trickle Truth Discovery and settled on trying to reconcile. But I just could not get past it eating at me that this person was not who I'd given her credit for being. I could not stop the mind movies, could not stop the triggers, of which she was one. Actually, could not see myself truly at peace and content in my home life with her. I envisioned myself getting truly sick. Would she be there for me? Would I believe her to be? And it was very telling how my deep-rooted trust in her was gone. What is funny is that in the moment of D-Day admission, I knew this was so, as much as I couldn't believe it. And yet, despite the fact that I had always said it was a deal-breaker, I actually stayed and tried to make it work anyway. Sometimes you just know yourself inside, really know, and cannot deny that. But for a child, you will try anything. I could have stayed and led a pretty normal life. It would have been okay. Maybe we would have even grown somewhat together. But deep down, it would always be there for me, and I'd never be the same. And frankly, I resented that, and the doubt that would now always be there. Please know that I think reconciliation can happen and wish it could have for me. I just also think that for some, like me, it just isn't going to. It can't and won't no matter how much counseling, talking, and corrective action from the WS takes place. Something sacred inside the BS breaks, and it is gone forever. I actually wish that were not true for me, but in the end, despite my wishes, I had to admit what was inside of me was there and leave. I could have saved myself a lot of time, money, tears, sleepless nights, and angst by recognizing my true inner self, but had to work through the process to get there. And I'd always said that if I were going to leave, I needed to be able to look into the mirror and be able to say, I tried. I knew 10 years down the road, I'd be feeling it, and it would not go away. It would fester inside of me, eat at me, and no amount of talking about it would make it go away. It was there, it happened, it could not be taken away. She simply didn't love me enough not to do it, or to stop doing it once she supposedly realized her mistake. So, my choice was to not be with her anymore. It was the choice that felt right for me, not for everyone. But I always say to anyone I speak with about this subject, everything is a choice. Every day, every action related to your marriage is a choice. How to behave, how to communicate, where to be, what to do or not do. My comment, the blame really does lie with your so-called wife. It takes two to tango. No matter how things went down, she knew she had a child and H at home, who depended on her. In all truth, whether you like it or not, she is the real villain here. She did not protect her marriage.